Hi, and welcome everybody. This is Jay Early, and this is a webinar on self-therapy journey. You will see on the right side of your screen a place where you can type in chats. I love to have chats, so please type in who you are and where you're from. And kind of get us started. And also, if there's any, hopefully you can see me and hear me fine, but if there's any problems with that, please go ahead and let me know in the chat, and I'll see what I can do about it. And also, I found that people really help each other on the chat too. So I'm going to be able to deal with everything you put on the chat or answer all your questions. Hopefully other people will be able to, or maybe if there's some question that they can't answer and I don't get to, send me an email in response to, you'll be getting emails after this webinar, a couple of emails. You can respond to those and ask me any questions you want. I love to answer questions. So let's get started. I want to start by giving you a little background on who I am, and we'll go to my PowerPoint presentation for that. So I'm a psychologist. I've been practicing psychotherapy for 40 years, and I'm a former computer scientist, which is one of the reasons that I actually developed Self-Therapy Journey, because it was a great way to integrate these two professional sides in me. Even though I haven't done computer science professionally for 40 years, it's still a fun thing for me. And of course, I didn't actually do the programming behind Self-Therapy Journey, but I used a lot of my computer science, my programming skills in working with my programmer and other people to develop it. Anyway, I discovered IFS in 2002. For those of you who don't know, IFS is Internal Family Systems Therapy, which is a really powerful and effective form of therapy that I did not develop. It was created by Richard Schwartz, and it's been around for 25, 30 years, although it's just now in the last maybe 10 years or so spreading around the US and the world. Okay, glad to see some of you are responding to typing in your chats. Great, thanks. I'll just say a little bit more about IFS because the self-therapy journey is partially based on IFS. IFS works with parts, sometimes called subpersonalities. It's very user-friendly, very easy for most people to use, to understand, to work with. It's non-pathologizing. It doesn't treat you as, if you have psychological issues, it doesn't treat you as something pathological. It's very effective. It is spiritually oriented. It's effective across the board, but it's especially effective for trauma. Okay, and among the many things I've done with IFS is I have written, actually 6 years ago, 2009, I wrote a book called Self-Therapy, which is really a manual for doing IFS. It's actually written for the general public, but it's also very useful, I hear, for many therapists. And this book has sold almost 23,000 copies, even though it's a self-published book, and the sales are still going strong. Isn't that cool? I love that. Get back to it. Okay. And it's been translated into 3 foreign languages so far. And this is a tribute to not only how good a book this is, but how powerful and effective IFS is. I have also, now this is something I've developed, which is the pattern system, which you can think of as a periodic table for psychology. And it's a detailed system for understanding the psychology of personality, and especially as it relates to personal growth and psychological healing. You can see a sample on the right side. This is one of 3 dimension groups, actually now 4 dimension groups in the pattern system. And you can see this one is the interpersonal dimension group, and it has 10 different dimensions for different aspects of relating to each other, relating to people interpersonally. And the pattern system deals with patterns, which are problematic ways of being and relating, capacities, which are healthy ways of being and relating, and wounds, which are emotional wounds, things that happen to us in childhood to cause us psychological difficulties later in life. Okay. Self-therapy journey, which is what this webinar is about, is a web application. It's a program that's on a website that you can log into and use for psychological exploration and healing. And it's based on both IFS and the pattern system. And you can use it to work with many different patterns, capacities, or wounds. And I'll, of course, be telling you a lot more about that as time goes on today. So my passion is threefold: to bring IFS to the world. It's such a wonderful, powerful form of therapy. I really, I mean, it actually is spreading, but I want to help spread it even more and spread it beyond just people who are in IFS therapy, but really to people who want to work on themselves using IFS. And to that end, I've been teaching classes in IFS to the general public, as well as some training classes to therapists for many, many years. I also want to bring the pattern system to the world. I feel like it's a new system and more detailed than any other personality system that I know of. And the third thing is I would like to I'd like to reach the large number of people with self-therapy journey, reach those people who either don't have access to therapy or prefer to do their inner work alone. Okay, so that's a little about me. Now, the webinar, I'm going to start pretty quickly with a guided meditation for accessing self, which is an important concept in IFS, which I'll explain in a minute. And then I'm going to give you an introduction to self-therapy journey and explain roughly what it is and how, what it's about and what you can do with it. And that will probably take 20 or 30 minutes. And at that point, I'm going to switch and go into a lot more detail about self-therapy journey. But in case any of you don't need the detail or don't have the time, after that introduction, I'll give you a link where you can go on to, at any time, you can go onto the self-therapy journey website and explore around and really get to know it. And then those of you who are interested in really seeing how self-therapy journey works in detail can stay with me on the webinar and learn a lot more about it. And then at the end, I'll talk more about the details of how to enroll in self-therapy journey and give you a bunch of additional resources for STJ and IFS and other things. Okay, so let's start out with this is a very short guided meditation, so don't be concerned that it's going to take a long time. And in IFS, the self is a concept which refers to your core self, your true self. You might think of it as your spiritual center. And it's a place of compassion, connectedness, calmness or groundedness, and curiosity, and a number of other fine qualities. It's who you really are. And it's also the agent of healing in IFS, which is one of the things that makes IFS so wonderful as a form of self-therapy. So I'm going to now just lead you through a short guided meditation to help you possibly access self, yourself. So get into a comfortable position for a guided meditation, which is for most people is sitting upright but relaxed, Although if you want to, you could lie down as long as you're not likely to fall asleep, although this is a short meditation, so you probably wouldn't anyway. So close your eyes, go inside, and begin by focusing your attention on your belly. And notice what the body sensations are in your belly, whether it's a fullness or a solidness. Or maybe you just are aware of the rise and fall of your belly with each breath. Or it could be something entirely different. Whatever it is, just be present with that sensation in your belly. This is a way to help you get centered and relaxed and into a deeper meditative place, which is also pretty close to what IFS calls self. Take a deep breath. Continue to be present with the sensations in your belly. If you find your mind wandering, thinking about other things, just gently bring it back to your belly and your sensations in your belly in this moment. And as you stay with your belly, you may find yourself relaxing even more. Perhaps going into a deeper place inside. And you also might be aware of some recurring thought or some emotion that's there or some body sensation that might indicate that a part of you is activated, one of those subpersonalities I was mentioning. If that's the case, just take a moment to feel that part of you or ask it what it's concerned about. And once you've heard from that part of you, acknowledge it and let it know that you are here to help with whatever it's concerned about. If it's concerned about how you're performing in the guided meditation or the issue that brought you to this webinar or something that happened, earlier today that upset you or anything else, just let it know that you're here to help. Doesn't have to deal with that issue alone. And see if that helps that part to maybe relax a little, knowing that you're here. And if it does, just notice if there are any other parts activated. And if there are, take a moment to get to know each of them. And reassure them that you're here to help with whatever they're concerned about. And see if they can also, therefore, relax. And if your parts have now relaxed, or if you didn't have any parts activated to begin with, then you're probably in self. And if that's the case, just take a moment to feel what that feels like. To be in that relaxed, grounded, open place. And if there was a part activated that didn't relax, then, well, then you know. There's nothing wrong with that. That happens all the time. Then you know that that's a part you might need to work with in the future. Okay, and then gradually begin to bring yourself back from the meditative place you've been in. Taking your time, but gradually maybe moving around a little, maybe opening your eyes. Coming back to the room that you're in, and back to the webinar. Okay, so let's continue now. Oh, I know, I want to do a quick little poll, or two of them actually. So let me set this polls up. Select poll, so you should now see a poll in the right side of your screen. So please click, this is, are you familiar with IFS? Please click yes or no. And in a couple seconds, I will end it. Wow, looks like everybody on is familiar with IFS. Okay, cool. Thank you. So now I will end that poll. And now the other one is, are you familiar with the pattern system? So please click yes or no on that one. Okay. Thanks. So it looks like about half of you are familiar with the pattern system. Great, thanks. Okay. All right, let's move on. Thanks. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit about self-therapy journey. It's inexpensive, a tiny fraction of the cost of therapy. It allows you to take charge of your inner work. Of course, you also have to be fairly self-directed in order to do that. It allows you to do to work on yourself at your own convenience in your own time, and with privacy, if that's what you want. Although I also encourage people to get a buddy or a friend to kind of be there for you as you're doing it, if you want. But if you want full privacy, you can have that. It's more personal and more interactive than a self-help book. It helps you to keep your inner work on track in various ways that you'll see. And it provides detailed, customized reports about each of the patterns and capacities and wounds that you work on. What you can do with Self-Therapy Journey is you can discover issues that you need to work on using our quizzes, as well as working on the ones you already know about. It helps you to understand your problematic patterns of interacting with people or how you are in the world. It helps to actually lead you through an IFS session with your parts, because there are recorded guided meditations in Self-Therapy Journey that actually take you through pieces of IFS sessions. It allows you to heal your wounded inner child parts. It allows you to explore the healthy capacities that you'd like to develop to have acting in your life instead of the problematic patterns that you want to change. It helps you to set up and track real-time practices to actually change your behavior from the problematic patterns to the healthy capacities. And it also allows you to develop a complete psychological profile of yourself as you go. You can do Self-Therapy Journey on your own or as an adjunct to therapy, like you might be in, especially if you're in IFS therapy, but maybe even in other kinds of therapy. You can use it between sessions or things like that. You can do Self-Therapy Journey by yourself, or you can have a buddy with you who either actually witnesses your sessions or is there on the phone, or just somebody you talk to afterwards and share what happened. You can use Self-Therapy Journey for insight into your psychological issues, for deep healing of psychological wounds, for behavior change, or for all of the above. And we also have an online community as part of Self-Therapy Journey that you can join to find buddies and support groups as you're going through it. I also provide personal support to everyone who's using it. And in some cases, you can also take a course along with using Self-Therapy Journey. I've tested STJ, Self-Therapy Journey, on hundreds of people, and it's actually been live for a year and a half. I've gotten lots of wonderful feedback about it. Here are a couple of testimonials that people wrote. I won't actually read them aloud. You can just read it. Here's another one where she goes into a little more detail about how quickly it helped to identify areas she wanted to work on, and how the guided meditations helped, and the homework practices, and so on. So, and there are lots and lots of testimonials, including some video testimonials on the Self-Therapy Journey website. You can look over those and get an idea of how helpful it's been for a lot of people. Okay, so as I mentioned before, in the pattern system, there are these three things. There are patterns, which are problematic ways of being or functioning or relating, such as people-pleasing or having an inner critic, or the indulger pattern where you overeat or overindulge in things. There's lots of patterns. There's 23 of them that are currently implemented in STJ. And there are also healthy capacities, such as assertiveness or self-esteem or conscious consumption, aliveness, self-care, so on. There's lots of them. And you can also start Self-Therapy Journey with a pattern that you would like to change. You can start it with a healthy capacity that you would like to develop or develop further. Or you can actually start it with the third thing, which is the emotional wounds. And emotional wounds are things like shame or abandonment, or being judged a lot as a child, or being betrayed, being controlled, etc., etc. There's 14 different wounds. And so you can start self-therapy journey with any of those three things. You can start it with a wound that you'd like to heal. Most people start it with a pattern. And then there are many quizzes in self-therapy journey, and you can use, if you're not sure which patterns or capacities or wounds you should start with, you can take one of our quizzes to help give you an idea, and you'll get a score. Like there's a quiz for interpersonal patterns and a quiz for personal patterns, and the same for capacities, interpersonal and personal, and then there's a quiz for wounds, and then there is even some other quizzes that are more specific. So you can use quizzes to help you decide where to start. And the other thing you should know about self-therapy journey is that each pattern is paired with the capacity that transforms it. So for example, if you have a people-pleasing pattern, that gets transformed by the assertiveness capacity. If you have an inner critic pattern, that gets transformed by the self-esteem capacity. Or the other way to say it is, if you have the people-pleasing pattern and you work it through and transform it, what you will have then is assertiveness. And if you have the inner critic pattern, which of course tears down your self-esteem, and you work that through and transform it, what you will have is self-esteem. And if you have the indulger pattern, which is related to food addictions and overeating, and you transform that into the conscious consumption capacity, and so on. So that's a little bit about how self-therapy journey is structured. So now what I'm going to do is, so this is the kind of initial setup for self-therapy journey. Now what I'm going to do is I just loaded something which you should now see in your right-hand column. You can click on that at any time. That will actually take you to the self-therapy journey website where you can look around in case you want to do that. But I'm also going to be actually showing you self-therapy journey. So as long as you're on the webinar, you probably don't need to do that, but you're welcome to do it at any point, especially if you decided that you don't want to stick around for the whole thing. You might want to click on that and look at it now or later. So I'm now going to do a demonstration and take you through one particular pattern with self-therapy journey. And there are 5 stages. And the pattern that I've chosen just for illustration, remember there are 23 different patterns. The one I've chosen is the inner critic pattern. And we're going to go through, I'll show you what the 5 stages are as we go through it. So actually, I'm now going to switch from the, well, now that I've taken that off, let me just say hi. You can you can actually see me. Here I am. I'm not just a voice behind the screen. But now I'm actually going to show you self-therapy journey itself. So this is now the self-therapy journey website. This is the home page. Oh, and I should log in. There we go. So here you can see, here are these 3 categories I mentioned: psychological problems, which are really the patterns, emotional wounds, and healthy capacities. And these are some of the most common ones, but you can actually click here. Like if you click here, you can see a whole list of common psychological issues and what patterns they correspond to. A lot of them are obvious, like anger corresponds to the angry pattern. Codependence corresponds to the caretaking pattern, and so on. So you can look at common interpersonal issues, common personal issues like depression, dissociation, inner critic, lack of self-confidence, and this tells you, and then you can click on any of these patterns to learn more about them and see if you actually want to work on this. So if I decided, oh, I'm really shy, which I actually am pretty shy, and it's something I've worked on for many years and made a lot of progress on, but that's the self-effacing pattern. So you can click on that, get a description of self-effacing pattern, It shows that it's transformed by the social confidence capacity. You could click on this and get a description of that, which I won't bother with. And then you can actually click here to start working on the self-effacing pattern. But of course, you'd have to be enrolled for it. So I'm not going to do that right now because that's not the one I'm demonstrating. But this gives you an idea. Then going back to the home page, you can also see a list of all the emotional wounds. And I've broken those down into categories. Harm wounds, like attack wound, where you were yelled at or hit. The judgment wound, where you were judged. Shame wound. Or you can see there's lots of different wounds. And of course, these all correspond to potentially very painful things that we all carry around in us from childhood and can be healed. And then there's also, oh, I should show you. So for each of these categories, let me go back to the home page. So here, you can not only see a list of all the issues, you can also take a quiz. So let's say, actually one of two quizzes. So let's say I'm interested in how I relate to people interpersonally. So I can take the interpersonal patterns quiz. And here's a bunch of questions. And here, I've sort of filled them out. This is just my thing. So this is actually not even my information. This is kind of just filled out randomly, but I can click on the results since I've already checked off all of them. And here now I get results for this quiz. I get scores out of 100 for each pattern. And it gives me an idea, on these high scores, you probably do have the pattern. If you have an intermediate score, it says you may have the pattern. And if you have a lower score, whoops, do I have any lower score? No, I don't have any, but it would say you probably don't have the pattern. And then for any of these, you can click, let's say, oh, wow, I scored high on controlling. Now, what does that mean? And you can get a description of that and see what it is, learn more about it, see what capacity transforms it, in this case, cooperation, and so on. And then there's also quizzes for the wounds and for the healthy capacities. And the same thing here, you can see a list of all the healthy capacities. Assertiveness, being centered, being able to challenge people, cooperation, good communication, intimacy, self-care, self-support, social confidence, aliveness, clarity, and so on. So, gives you an idea. Okay, so that's a rough. That's how you get started. You can take a quiz, or you may know what pattern or capacity or wound you want to start with, and you can just do that. Now, for the purposes of this, I'm going to show you the inner critic pattern. But I'm going to go back and just check and see if there's anything on the chat that I need to be looking up. Okay, looks like everything's, ooh. Okay, looks like everything's good. Looks like, anyway, feel free to ask questions if you want on the chat. I'll try to answer them if I can. If not, probably other people will answer them. So looks like we're doing great. Okay, so now let me go back to therapy journey. Okay, so here we are. So now let's suppose that you're in here and you're already enrolled and you've decided that you want to work on your inner critic pattern. So you will see that there's the main thing here is in the center column, and this kind of gives you a description of the inner critic pattern. So you can, and then each pattern has a kind of false belief. In this case, there's something wrong with me. That's sort of a very short summary of the description of the pattern. But of course, what this really means is that there's an inner part of you that we call an inner critic that's attacking you or judging you or doubting you or shaming you, making you feel bad about yourself. And then you can go on to the next page, and you will see over here on the left This is actually a little sequence of pages or steps. I call it a step sequence. The first one was the description. The second one is the stories page. And from here, you can actually click here to read a more detailed story about somebody who had an inner critic pattern. Or you can type in your own story if you want. And then you can go on to the next page. And this one tells you patterns that are similar to the pattern you're looking at in case you want to actually explore one of those instead of the one that you're on or in addition to. And it turns out that in Self-Therapy Journey, there's actually 5 kinds of inner critics: the taskmaster, the perfectionist, the underminer, the food controller, and the destroyer. So you might want to choose one of those rather than the general purpose inner critic pattern. And you can even take a quiz to help you determine that. That's a sort of special thing. That's not true for all the patterns, but there is one for inner critics. And then the next page. Now, we could get to the next page by hitting next at the bottom the way I already did, or we can click over here. And now here you get to start exploring a little bit more about your patterns. So what tends to trigger inner critic attacks? And here's a list of common things. You can check off some of them. I've checked off a few. Like somebody asked me to do something I messed up in the past. Somebody gets angry at me if I don't keep things under control. Or it happens when I'm eating or drinking or being sexual or whatever it might be. Or, let me just get rid of this. Or if you can add your own. So I could type in here another situation, hit return, and it gets, you can see, whoops, it scrolled up, but you can see here, it got added to the list. So you can add your own, and all of the lists in STJ are that way. You can and you can add more. You see, it's added one, but now I can add another one. So you're not just limited to adding one. And then in this case, what type of people tend to trigger your inner critic pattern? Judgmental people, or maybe women, or maybe managers or bosses. So you can check off a few, or specific people. You can type in the names of specific people in your life that tend to trigger your inner critic pattern. Okay, hold on just a second. I need a drink of water. Okay, now this first step sequence you can see is an intro step sequence. It has just 5 steps. This is just to help you learn enough about this pattern to get an idea of whether you have it strongly enough that you want to work on it. So if you don't, you click here and go back and look for something else. And if you do, I'm going to assume you do, we'll click here to begin the 5-stage process. Now you can see these 5 stages are here across the top of the page. And on this page, I also summarize these 5 stages. And I'm actually going to go over the 5, so I won't actually do it now. But stage 1 is where you actually explore, in this case, your inner critic pattern and its underlying dynamics. And it tells you how long each stage takes, roughly. So if you're ready to begin with stage 1, you click here. And here's a little video intro to stage 1, which I won't bother with you because I'm giving you the intro right now. And you can actually read the stage 1 user's guide, or actually watch a stage 1 demo video, which is kind of going to go over what I'm about to go over with you. But when you're ready to start, you click here, and now you're actually in stage 1 itself. And you notice that the list of pages over here has changed, because now the original list was for the intro stage. This is for stage 1. And you can see that there's about 10 pages or steps for this stage where you are learning about your particular inner critic pattern. Or in this case, it might just be one of your inner critic patterns. So the first one is behavior and feelings. So you can check off I try to do things perfectly. I set very high standards in the things I do. I work to fit in so I won't be rejected, etc. You can click off whichever ones of those, and there are quite a few of them because inner critic stuff is big stuff for most people. So there's a lot of them here. I've just checked off a few. Move on to the next page. So now, this is the first time now where we're getting into IFS type material. So remember, IFS works with parts. And actually, you all are familiar with IFS, so I don't have to give you a lot of details on this, but IFS works with parts, and if you have an inner critic pattern, it means that there's a part of you, or there could be more than one part, but we're going to right now just focus on one part of you that is an inner critic in this case. And so you can choose a name for it. In this case, I've already called it the bully. Here's a list of possible names, but if you don't like any of them, you can choose your own name. Or you could even go inside and get in touch with your inner critic and find out what it wants to be called and type that name in here. Or you click here, you see, and then a box comes up, and then you can type the name. But I'm not going to do that. I'll go back to the bully. And then you can also get an image of your inner critic. So here are some clip art images of possible inner critics. You can choose one of those, whatever fits for you. Or if you prefer, you can go to Google Images and find any image off the internet through Google Images, download it to your computer, and then click here and upload it to Self-Therapy Journey. Or if the third option is you can type in, if you have a real clear image and you don't find it here or in the internet, you can type in a description of the exact image you have for your inner critic here. And you can change the image at any point. By the way, these little things are pop-ups that tell you additional things. So all these little purple things are pop-ups that give you additional information. So now we continue on. And if you have an inner critic pattern, or any pattern, there will be certain thoughts that are associated with it, or you can think of these as statements that come from the part, in this case from the inner critic. So here are a list, you can see, here's a list of common inner critic type statements. You can see how long it is. Whoa. So you just check off whichever these seem to fit for you. Whatever these you seem to, when your inner critic is triggered, what are the things you hear? What are the attacks or the judgments or the shaming that you hear? You're stupid, you're inadequate, you're not worth the effort. Who do you think you are, etc., etc. You check off whichever ones fit, or you can add your own. Now, here's a little interesting thing. When I teach about working with the inner critic using IFS, I teach people that there are actually two parts involved. There's not only your inner critic, there's also what Bonnie and I call the criticized child. By the way, Bonnie is my wife and partner, and we've done a lot of inner critic work together. So when your inner critic is attacking you, it is hurting a part of you that we call the criticized child, which in IFS terms is an exile. And there are going to be certain emotions, feelings, and beliefs that go along with this criticized child part of you that is receiving the brunt of the criticisms from your inner critic. So here are some of the things, the feelings or beliefs that this criticized child might be carrying it: feeling inadequate, believing that you're lazy, believing you're a loser, feeling ashamed. So you can check off whichever ones of these or add your own. And then the next page. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. You can now do a guided meditation. It's a recorded guided meditation. Here are, You actually have a choice of doing it with music or without. You actually have 3 choices: with music, without music, or you can just click to a page where you can read the guided meditation. Here's the actual text of the guided meditation. So you can read that, or have a friend read it to you, however you want to do it. Lots of options. This will take you through roughly the first half of an IFS session, where you get to know your inner critic. Now, the inner critic is a protector in IFS. A protector is a type of part that tries to protect you from pain. It might seem a little peculiar that I'm saying that the inner critic is a protector, that it's trying to protect you from pain, because, of course, we all know it's actually causing you pain. But nevertheless, it's true. Inner critic parts attack us and shame us and doubt us and judge us because they think that's the best way to get us to do things well or not get hurt, to protect us from being hurt by other people by hurting us first. There's all kinds of different reasons. I won't get into this here because this is not a webinar on the inner critic. I've done those, and I've written books on the inner critic, so there's a lot I could tell you, but this is not about this. This is about STJ. But anyway, the inner critic is a protector, and this guided meditation takes you through an IFS session where you get into self, and then you actually have a dialogue with your inner critic part where you get to know it and find out what it's trying to do for you, what it's trying to get for you, or what it's trying to protect you from, either people in the world or your inner pain that it's trying to protect you from. And it helps you to make a connection with your inner critic, which is a huge step forward in transforming your inner critic. And the same for any pattern you're working with. There's a different guided meditation for each one that helps you connect with that particular type of part and find out about it and so on. So now the next page has to do with the underlying motivation behind your pattern, or behind the part, the protector in IFS terms, that engages in that pattern. So probably you've learned quite a bit. And of course, the underlying motivation is just what I was talking about. What drives the critic to judge you or shame you? What is it trying to get for you? What is it trying to protect you from? So here are some examples. To get me to perform well so I get approval and admiration, to get me to perform well so I don't get shamed, to control my destructive behavior so I don't get rejected, to undermine my confidence so I won't take risks and fail, etc., etc., etc. So hopefully by doing the guided meditation, you've gotten a good sense of what your inner critic's underlying motivations are. But in addition to that, here is a list of the common ones. And as you read through this list, you may intuitively get a sense of, oh, this is probably another motivation that I didn't get in the guided meditation. So you check off as many of these as seem accurate. And then we go on to, and you can see that there's lots of little additional things here about what if you want to add a motivation, what if you don't know, etc. There's lots of little help things here. And then we go on to the next page. You know what, I think I'm going to skip there's just so much in Self-Therapy Journey. If I try to go through every single page, I think you're going to get, it's all very useful when you're actually working on a thing, but I think for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to skip a few of the less important pages. So I'm going to skip down now to the report. So now that you have gone through all these pages and filled out and checked things off and typed things in. Oh, by the way, the other thing I didn't mention is that you can also take notes. At any point, I can go over here, click on this, and take notes on whatever's come up for me as I'm processing any of this. And these notes will also appear. So I'm just going to put here are my, my notes. And now I'll close that. And now this is my inner critic pattern report, and it's a compilation of everything that I've checked off and typed in. So you can see some of these things, behaviors and feelings. Here's the name, here's an image, thoughts, feelings of the criticized child, motivations, and so on. So, and then this report, you can print it out, or you can just access it anytime from your computer or from a tablet or a smartphone and have it available. And then the last page just says, congratulations, you've finished, and gives you a little real-time homework practice to help you learn that you might want to do to help you learn more about your, in this case, your inner critic pattern. And by the way, you can tell that if you actually did the guided meditation, what I've done up till now probably would take an hour to an hour and a half, which is probably all the time you would want to spend in one sitting on self-therapy journey anyway. So once you get this far, it's probably a good idea to take a break, come back to it in a week or tomorrow or in a few days, whenever you feel like it. Maybe do the homework to learn more about your inner critic pattern and so on. Of course, you can stop at any point. You don't have to stop here. And in fact, when you do stop, self-therapy journey remembers where you were, and you can go back to where you were when you check back in again. But it's often convenient to stop at the end of a stage. So this is the end of stage 1. Okay. Okay, I think I'm not going to try to answer people's questions. It's just going to take too much time. So let me just go on. Okay, so once we finish this, we'll go into stage 2. And here's a video about stage 2. Now, stage 2 deals with the underlying childhood origins of your pattern. And these are related to the underlying motivations that we talked about in stage 1. So what happens here in stage 2, as you will see, is here, and you know, you're probably not going to have anywhere near this many, but for demonstration purposes, I checked off a lot of the different possible motivations for the inner critic pattern. And only the ones I checked off show up here, not all the others. And so, and you might have 3 or 4 or 5, not 12. But in any case, you can look over these and you will see that connected to each one is a wound. So if you checked off to get me to perform well so I don't get rejected, then it means it's protecting a rejection wound. If you say to control my destructive behavior so I don't get attacked, then it's protecting an attack wound. If you say to undermine my confidence so I won't take risks and fail, there's actually a number of different failure wounds. And you can click on this and there'll be a list of them, and you can choose which one you might want to work on and so on. So you can pick any of these, and you'll be able to do more than one wound. So you don't have to just pick one, but you want to pick the one that seems to start with, that seems most interesting. So let's suppose you pick the rejection wound. So here's a description of it. And if you'd like to explore it, you click here. And now we're in stage 2. And you can see over on the left is another long list of pages. It's even longer than 10. It's about 13 or 15 pages. But it's similar. So here's just an intro page. It just kind of tells you what's happening here. And then here's a description of the rejection wound. By the way, the rejection wound is basically a situation where you were rejected as a child, and that's the wound, either by your parents or your peers. Excuse me. Okay, so the one wound that's similar to the rejection wound is the unlovable wound. So you can click here, read about that, and decide, oh, maybe I want to do that instead of the rejection wound. But let's assume you don't, and you're going to go on. So this is similar to the other page where you can explore what triggers your wound. And this is similar to a page in stage 1 where you can explore the behaviors and beliefs that go with your wound. So, and this, by the way, this is not for the inner critic pattern. This is for the rejection wound. It's different. So you can check off a few of these or add your own. And then what are the feelings or emotions that go with your particular rejection wound? Now, notice that this is, I should say, wounds are not always entirely conscious. In fact, the job of protectors is to keep them out of your consciousness. So you might not completely know the answers to all of these things, like your behaviors or feelings that go with the wound. But I found that many people do. Even if you wouldn't have been able to tell me if I just asked you, if you see a list of possible feelings or behaviors or thoughts that go with the wound, often you have an intuitive sense of which ones feel right. And so people don't have as much trouble with this as you might think. But you can always come back later because there'll be more of a chance to explore your wound, and you might have a better sense later of what the feelings are or the behaviors, and you can add those later. Then the next page is, so this wound corresponds to what in IFS is called an exile, which is a wounded inner child part. And so you can choose a name for it. You can choose an image for it. And then you can start exploring the origins of this rejection wound, like what happened to you as a child. Mostly as a child. Occasionally a wound will happen in adulthood, but mostly it's from childhood. So you can explore. So let's say your rejection mainly came from your father. So you can click here and say, okay, father. And then here are a list of possible things that father did to make you feel rejected. Father turned away from me. Father pushed me away. Father became ashamed of me, criticized me, etc. Or what are the things he actually said? Get lost. Don't bother me. I don't want to hang out with you, etc. Or you can add your own here because, of course, these might not be exactly accurate. And then what type of situations did this happen? You can check off a few of these. And close. And then if you also got rejected by some other people, your mother, stepmother, both parents, a sibling, teacher, peers, you can do those too. But let's go on. Now, it's also possible that you ended up feeling rejected not because of what a person did to you, but because of situations that you were in. I was bullied a lot as a child. I had a hard time making friends when I was young. My peers chose other kids, etc. So you can check off any of those. And then the other possibility is that you ended up with a rejection wound because of one of your parents had a rejection wound. And that's called a legacy wound. And so you can click here in that case, and if you have and again, this will be an intuitive sense. Like, gee, it seems like my mother really acted like she felt rejected. So you can click in here and click some of the details of how you know that. So moving right along. So now here is another guided meditation, again, with music, without music, or you can read it. And this will take you through the steps in IFS, of an IFS session, of actually healing the exile that has the rejection wound. So you can do that guided meditation. And then you get to here. And now, just like with a pattern, now you have a wound report. So here's your rejection wound report that compiles everything that you checked off, the name. Oh, this one has a couple of different images, and so on. And I think I'll skip this page and go on to the last one. And now here you've finished stage 2. And again, this is probably a good time to take a break and come back to self-therapy journey on another day or another week. And also here's some more homework if you want to help you learn more about your rejection wound. Okay. So when you finish that, you return and you will see that now we're still in stage 2, because you have, as I mentioned before, you have the option of doing another wound if you want. You don't want to do too many, but you might want to do another one. It's up to you. Or if you don't, then you click next. And now here's a place where you can explore the childhood conditioning that might be behind your inner critic pattern. So this is different than having an emotional wound from childhood. This is where a parent modeled being self-critical or self-critical of you, or you were taught to behave this way, to criticize yourself, or you're rewarded for criticizing yourself, or you were punished for not criticizing yourself, or you internalized critical messages from a parent, and so, et cetera, et cetera. So these are ways, I'm not going to go into exactly, but you can click on these, who conditioned you in this way, and keep track of that. Now, if you actually internalized your inner critic from a parent, then there's a guided meditation to help you work with that. So that's what this page is for. And then also, why is this not showing? Ooh, there's a little bug there. Let me see if I can get this page to come up. Wow. Let me make a note of that. Okay. Anyway, moving right along to stage 3. So we've now finished stages. We've now worked on the pattern, the inner critic pattern. We've now explored the wounds that are behind the pattern, that drive the pattern. Now we're going to explore the healthy capacity that will either transform the pattern or will replace the pattern when you work it through. In this case, it's the self-esteem capacity. So here is another little video, but when you're ready, you click here and you're into stage 3. So here's a description of self-esteem, the capacity. The next page, you can actually read the story of someone who had the inner critic pattern and worked it through and developed the self-esteem capacity. So that both gives you more information about the self-esteem capacity and also gives you some inspiration for what's possible. But now you can explore your particular self-esteem capacity in more detail. So here are a bunch of different aspects of self-esteem: feeling good about myself, accepting myself, including my shortcomings, appreciating my talents and skills, appreciating what I've accomplished and done in my life, appreciating my positive qualities, knowing that I am intrinsically good, etc., etc. So you can choose, you can click off any of the ones that any of these that you already have. And then down here is the same list where you can check off any of these that you would like to develop that you don't have so much, or that you may have some but you want to develop further. So this gets you more into the self-esteem capacity. And again, there will be a healthy part that corresponds to your self-esteem capacity. So and this may be a part that you already have or a part that you want to develop. So you can choose a name for it. I chose full heart. You can choose an image for it. You can get a sense of what situations or types of people or specific people in your life would do or would support you in having high self-esteem. And then you end up, again, now you have your self-esteem report that compiles everything that you did in this step sequence. And again, as with all reports, you can print it out or you can access it from a computer or any device. And then again, you might want to take a break here. And here's another little homework practice to learn more about your self-esteem capacity. And when you're ready to move on, you go on to stage 4. Now, let me just take a little break here and take a bite of food. I'll be back in a couple seconds. I'm actually going anywhere. I'll just continue talking in a couple seconds. Okay, now in stage 5, this is stage 4, but it's a setup for stage 5. In stage 5, what you're going to do is you're going to set up a real-time practice, or you could think of it as a homework practice. So there's 2 aspects of self-therapy journey. There's the things that you actually do when you're sitting down with the web application on your computer and doing inner work. And then there's the practice you're going to do in your life, which is going to be aimed, in this case, at having the self-esteem capacity instead of the inner critic pattern at the various points, the various situations in your life where you tend to get attacked by an inner critic. So to start with, you're going to choose a practice situation that's likely to come up in the next week or 2. And it can be a specific incident that you know is coming up, like a meeting with your boss, or a series of incidents, or it could be a type of situation that's likely to arise, but you don't know when, such as when somebody criticizes you. That might trigger your inner critic. So, and here I actually chose one, when I speak out. So that's the practice situation in this example. So this would be for somebody who tends to get inner critic attacks when they speak out, and where they're going to practice feeling good about themselves instead of getting attacked by their inner critic in those situations. So now I've chosen the practice situation. And now I'm going to do a few more things. So in this one, I'm going to type in, when the bully, which was the name of the inner critic, is activated, how do you behave? It's actually more, in this case, how do I feel? I feel inadequate. Let's suppose that. How would I like to behave how I like to behave when full heart becomes activated instead of the bully? So what would that be? Well, I'd like to feel confident and worthwhile. Okay. And then what are the bully's fears? Now let's see. That cause it to behave in the usual way. Well, let's say fear of failure. So let's say the bully attacks me to try to get me to really work hard and succeed because it's afraid I'm going to fail. Let's suppose, just making this up out of my head here. So now we're set up to actually work through the fears that your inner critic has that cause it to attack you. And you will notice here that this is the same list of motivations that I checked off in stage 1 that appeared in stage 2 and were associated with underlying wounds, and now they are associated with types of fears that can be worked through. So let's suppose we'll just do the first one to get me to perform well so I don't get rejected. So let's suppose I decide to do this one. I'm going to click on that. And so now we're working through rejection fear, which is fear of rejection, abandonment, lack of caring, or dismissal. So now we're in stage 4, you see, and we have a different set of steps over here. And again, the first one just kind of explains how these steps work. And basically the explanation here is that this fear that your inner critic has probably comes from childhood, and it's probably not all that realistic that it's going to happen now. Like when you speak out, maybe when you spoke out as a child, you got rejected. But if you speak, I mean, it could happen that if you speak out now, you would get rejected, but you know, you're an adult, you're not under your parents' power anymore. You've got lots of inner resources and outer supports. And so you're probably not going to be rejected, but even if you were, you could probably handle it. So this is a way of basically exploring that. Is the fear, I'm not going to go through these in quite as much detail, but the basic idea is the fear of rejection, if for speaking out, realistic? If it's not, you need to know that. If it is realistic, would it be worth speaking out anyway? If it is realistic, could you, and you spoke out and did get rejected, could you handle the pain? Or if you spoke out and somebody rejected you, or could you do it in such a way that you could prevent yourself from being rejected? So these are all basically ways of setting it up so that you can reassure your inner critic that it doesn't have to attack you because the thing that it's afraid of, rejection, is not going to happen. Or if it does happen, it's not a big deal, you can handle it. And then once you've done that, this is all preliminary, then there's a guided meditation here that actually takes you through reconnecting with your inner critic part and explaining to it, reassuring it that that in the practice situation that you chose, this is not everywhere, but in the practice situation that you chose, that its fears are not going to happen, or if they do, you can handle it, and therefore it doesn't need to attack you. So you talk to it about that. You ask it if it's willing to let go of attacking you in that situation that's coming up, and you work with it and see if you can negotiate that. And then that's the end of stage 4, or at least this round of stage 4, because you might want to do more one of these. So when we return, you will now see that we've got a page which is stage 4 continued, which again lists all the different underlying motivations for your pattern. So you now get to choose another working through if you want to. But let's assume you don't, and we'll go into stage 5. So, and now stage 5, we're going to actually set up the real-time practice. So we'll click here, And you can see now we're in stage 5, and we've got a different set of pages over here. And I'll go through these a little more quickly. The first one is just inspiration. It turns out that for most people, the hardest thing to actually do is the homework practice. You know, you may be able to get yourself to sit down and do the inner work, but to get to actually really pay attention to your life and do the homework practice, that's harder for most people. So there's a page where we talk about your reasons for really wanting to do this, the pain that get caused by your inner critic attacks, and what you'd like to have by resolving that, feeling better about yourself, and so on. Then what are the activation cues that let you know that your inner critic has been activated? How do you reassure the critic that it doesn't need to attack you anymore? And here you use the stuff you did in stage 4. And then here, there's ways to evoke the self-esteem capacity through statements you say, through body sensations, body posture, feelings, breathing. And also, if there are people in the practice situation who could support you in feeling good about yourself, what to do with them. And then there's the inner champion. Now, this is a concept that Bonnie and I have developed. And the inner champion is basically a healthy part. It's like an inner ally that supports you in feeling good about yourself and being yourself. And there's actually a different type of inner champion for each healthy capacity. So there's a self-esteem inner champion, and you can choose a name for it. Oh, and also there's a sort of a general guided meditation here for accessing the sources of your inner champion in positive memories from your past, or supportive figures from fiction, myth, or history. And then you can choose an image for your inner champion and a name for it. And then most importantly, you can choose what are the statements you'd like to hear from your inner champion that will support you in feeling good about yourself. You can check off whichever ones you'd like to hear or add your own. And then there's a guided meditation on this page for actually activating your self-esteem inner champion. And of course, you do this while you're doing this inner work, and then it will carry over to your practice in real time. And once you've finished that, you now have, this is the equivalent of the report that we got on all the other pages. You have a practice plan, which is a report that you can actually use to do your real-time practice. And it has, again, all the things that you checked off and filled out there, and then images and names and motivations and so on. And this is most important. You can print this out and carry it with you, or you can have it available on a device, so that when you're actually in the practice situation, like if you're right before you're meeting with your boss where you think your inner critic is going to get triggered, you can go over what you're going to do. Or if you're in a situation where somebody criticizes or rejects you and that triggers your inner critic, that as soon as you have a moment to yourself, you can refer back to your practice plan. Or you might just have enough of it memorized that you can actually do it in the moment that your inner critic starts attacking you. You can reassure it that it doesn't have to, and you can evoke self-esteem and bring in your inner champion and all of that to really turn things around in that moment. And then there's a couple pages of instructions for how to do the homework practice, which I won't go into. And then there's one page for that. And then there's a page for tracking your practice. And it turns out that we have 3 different types of tracking pages. One for each incident where it happens, a daily tracking page that you do like at the end of the day, and then a weekly tracking page. And this is a way of tracking what happened each time. Did you remember to do the practice? And if you did, what happened and how successful was it? And is there anything you want to change the next time you do it? And so on and so on. And also all that stuff gets kept. And so you'll have reports on each of these tracking pages that you can refer back to improve your practice anytime you want. And so that is the end of stage 5. And then there's just a few last things. You can explore patterns that are related to the inner critic pattern. You can explore the dimension of the self-esteem dimension in the pattern system, which is where the inner critic pattern and the self-esteem capacity are. There's additional help with, so here's books that we've written in online community and guided meditations and demo sessions and so on, so that can help you with this. And then finally, we get to the last page of the pattern. So you've now finished doing your inner critic pattern and your self-esteem capacity. And you have lots of options. You know, I won't go over all of this, but there's different ways that you might want to continue with your inner critic pattern. What you can do next, further options. And mainly the thing you do, every time you want to start, start fresh once you're already in, you go to your dashboard. So let me go there. So here is your self-therapy journey dashboard. So here is, if you had gone out and come back in, here it tells you can restart at the last place where you were. You can also begin exploring a new pattern of capacity by clicking here, or exploring a new wound. Or there's many places in self-therapy journey where you can say, oh, you know what? That pattern or capacity or wound looks interesting, but I don't want to stop what I'm doing right now. You can put it on a to explore lists. So you can click here to see your to explore lists. Here you can look at all your reports, or here you can review the quizzes you've taken or take a new quiz. Here you can review your practice pages. So if you're, once you finish this and you're out in the world and you go onto a device and you want to look at your practice plans, you can click here and pull up your practice pages, or your tracking practice pages for whatever you're working on. And then also, you can stop at any point in the middle of working with a pattern. Let me just show you the status and restart page. So if you're in the middle of working on any pattern capacity pair, you can click here to restart some of these, or you can click here to look at the practice pages, or you can, oh, this is for capacity. So you can here, you can look at, you can do a restart of capacity, or you can look at your reports or practice pages here. So there's a lot of stuff in the dashboard. This is basically where you go to decide where to go next. Oh, I know. The other thing I didn't mention is, let me go back here. You'll notice that, you probably did notice that on most of these pages I was on, there's a right column, which I haven't talked about. This is basically a help column. So if you want to get help, support using the system, this will take you to our support desk. Here's a click to the dashboard. If you're having trouble staying with the process at any point, if you're getting spaced out or distracted or bored or uncomfortable or feeling like avoiding it, you can click here to get help with that. If you're having painful emotions that are coming up and you need help with that, there's a page to help you with that. You can manually save a restart point at any point you want to. Here's a place where you can take notes, which will end up in your report. And here's where you can get more information about the dimension of the pattern system we're in. So here's some of the things you can do from the right column. Okay, so that basically covers it. Let me go see now. How are we doing on, oh, I know, I'm going to go here. Let's see how we're doing on, okay. So let's see if anybody's got questions, you might type them in now. Looks like everybody's getting good answers to their questions. Okay, great. So, oh, I know. Let me finish now and go back. I'm not quite finished. Oh, let's see. Hold on. I need to go back here and undo. Hi, everybody. I'm still here. Now I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation. No, that's not it. Here it is. So that was the demo. Now let me tell you a few more things about Self-Therapy Journey. So we have an online community that's part of it, that's associated with it. And you actually don't even have to be a Self-Therapy Journey user. It's also for people who are doing IFS, or just people who are working on a particular issue. We have some subgroups, like one for procrastination, one for people-pleasing, one for depression, and there'll probably be more starting. So in the online community, you can share your insights and progress with other people in the community. You can ask questions and get answers from other people in the community, or from Karen Locke, who is our online community manager. Or if you can't get answers from them, Karen will contact me and I'll come in and answer your questions. You can learn from what other people are sharing. You can also use the online community to find a partner to do IFS work with, or to a buddy to do Self-Therapy Journey work with. And it's a great way to develop community with people who are struggling with similar issues to yours. And you can also find a buddy to support you in doing your real-time practice. I think that's a really cool thing, because as I said, doing the real-time practice is the hardest thing for people to actually stick with. But having a buddy often helps you to stay accountable, so that you can really do the practice. And of course, you can also, your buddy can also help you stay accountable for actually doing the Self-Therapy Journey sessions. I've heard some people say, you know, I started it and I just kind of stopped doing it. Well, the disadvantage of not having a therapy session scheduled with your therapist is that you can avoid it. So I recommend that you actually schedule your Self-Therapy Journey sessions, even if they're just with you by yourself. Schedule them. But to get even more help in being accountable and really doing it, get yourself a buddy, either a friend of yours or somebody you find in the online community. Because if you say to your buddy, well, I'm going to do a session next Tuesday afternoon, and I'll talk to you that night, you're much more likely to do it than if you didn't. So one more thing to say, stage 2, or if you're just working on a wound by itself, in order to actually have access to be able to work on your childhood wounds, you need to be okayed by a licensed therapist or counselor, so that you can get an access code to have access to that part of Self-Therapy Journey. This is to make sure that the very small number of people who might be overwhelmed by pain or defenses if they were working on their childhood wounds, we want to make sure that that those people don't do it anyway and don't get into trouble that they can't handle. So this is a way of protecting people. Now, you can get okayed by either a current or a past therapist who knows you, or if you don't have anybody like that, you can be evaluated by me or some of our other Self-Therapy Journey therapist guides. I only charge $50 for the evaluation session because I want to make this as affordable as possible. So you'll see there's a place where you can contact me if you want to get a stage 2 access code. And then, of course, you also actually have to enroll for being able to do stage 2 or being able to do one. So I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. I definitely really want to support everybody who's an STJ user. So I encourage everybody, once they started using STJ a little bit, to contact me, and I'd be happy to call you and talk to you and welcome you and give you any support you need. And even beyond that, I'm available for any difficulties that come up. I'm available to help you with technical issues or short psychological questions you have. If you have something more extensive you need help with, I can do coaching on how to get the most out of STJ. And some people even like to do an individual IFS session with me occasionally while they're working on STJ. And then I also teach video conference courses on IFS and more specific topics every once in a while. And some of those are in conjunction with using STJ. So those are all those things. And then just to get you into a little bit more of the details of it, you can enroll in STJ at 3 levels. The shift level is a very simple, quick level that doesn't involve the guided meditations and all of the stuff, where you can just work on a pattern or a capacity at the shift level, can do it fairly quickly, and could get an introductory level of help. The change level is where you get to do basically much more than that. You could get all the guided meditations. You get all like at the shift level with a pattern, you only get stages 1 and 3. Whereas with the change level, you get stages 1, 3, 4, and 5, including all the guided meditations. The only thing you don't get with the change level is stage 2, the emotional wounds. And then the transformation level, you get everything. What is the cost? Okay, so for a single pattern or capacity at the shift level, it's just $8, and you have that forever. Or at the change level, it's $14.50. For a single wound, it's $8. Or, and most people tend to start out with one of these. Or if you really know or that you're going to be doing more extensive work with Self-Therapy Journey, you might want to, and it's your choice, but you can enroll on a monthly recurring basis. It's $30 a month for the change level, or $40 for the transformation level. Okay, so there are some resources that are available. Here's the website for Self-Therapy. Well, actually, on the right side of your screen is a link to the website for Self-Therapy Journey, where you can look around to your heart's content. I've also created 3 little booklets. One is the Professional's Guides to Self-Therapy Journey. And this one, the Self-Therapy User's Guide, is kind of what I just went over here in this webinar. And then there's also a user's guide that's oriented toward people who have eating issues. And then there are some additional resources for help with IFS. Self-therapy, as I mentioned at the beginning, is the very successful book I wrote that is a manual for IFS for both therapists and the general public. Freedom from Your Inner Critic is a book that Bonnie and I did that helps you apply IFS to working with inner critic parts. And then I've also written other books on IFS. And in our online store, we have a whole bunch of IFS guided meditations, a whole bunch of demonstration sessions where you actually get to listen to a session and see what an IFS session looks like and learn about IFS that way. And of course, there's lots of different webinars that I've done, and they are available in the store too. We also have recorded courses that are available. And here, by the way, you don't have to worry about writing down these websites unless you're in a big hurry, because you will get an email sometime in the next day, since you're signed up for this webinar, you will get an email that has a list of all these resources and links to all of them. So you don't have to worry about getting them now. Other IFS resources, if you're an IFS therapist, I have a consultation training group once a month. I teach basic and exiles courses on IFS for the general public and how to use IFS and working on yourself. And also doing IFS peer counseling with other people in the class. And these are 6-week classes by video conference. 6 weeks for the basics, 6 weeks for the exile class. Or there's also recorded versions of both those classes available in the online store. And then I have lately started, well, the next version of advanced IFS classes. If you've already taken the basic and probably the exiles class, you can join my ongoing advanced IFS class. Actually, I have 2 of them going, and I'm going to start a 3rd one this fall, or maybe even a 4th one. And these are both for professionals and non-professionals. Some classes have mostly professionals, some have a mix, some have mostly non-professionals. So it's a way of really going deep with this IFS work. And then you can also do individual IFS therapy. The Center for Self-Leadership, which is the organization that Dick Schwartz started. Dick Schwartz is the person who created IFS, has listings of all IFS therapists by location and on their website. Or you can also work with me or Bonnie, either in person or by phone or Skype. And this is our IFS website. And then there's a few other resources. There's my book on the pattern system. There's a book, this is also a pattern system book that covers 4 of the most central interpersonal dimensions: conflict, care, love, and power. And then there's some specific booklets on certain issues and webinars, as I mentioned, and there's a pattern system website. And that's it. Okay, well, thank you very much, those of you who stuck around till the end. I enjoyed doing this, and I hope I hope to see you in one of my classes, or have you watching one of my future webinars. So thanks for now, and look forward to working with you possibly at some point in the future. Oh, you know what? I might as well say goodbye in person. Here I am. So let me actually say goodbye to you this way. And again, if you had any questions that I didn't answer questions, but if you have questions that didn't get answered by anybody in the chat, you will see, you can email me, just reply to one of the, you'll get a couple emails. You'll get, everybody who registered for the webinar will get a link to a replay recording of the webinar, and you can reply. And then you also get a separate email that has all of the resources that I mentioned, and you can reply to either of those and ask me a question. Or while you're watching the replay, you can also ask me a question. There's a question box for that. Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.